which is overseen by Secretary Pete Buttigieg. A real winner. That guy's a real winner. Do you know how badly everything's run since he's run this Department of Transportation? He's a disaster. He was a disaster as a mayor. He ran his city into the ground, and he's a disaster now. He's just got a good line of bullshit.
The president based that statement on truth, because it is truth and it's fact, and it was relayed to him by the authorities who are overseeing the investigation into this horrific plane collision. And the president, as I said in my opening remarks, continues to be briefed on the collision by everybody across his cabinet, the Secretary of Transportation, the Secretary of Defense, the NTSB, who the commissioner there was in the Oval Office with him yesterday. Lindsay. Lindsay, go ahead.
You tell me, what's the site? The water? Want me to go swimming?
To deliver accountability, President Trump swiftly signed a memorandum directing an immediate assessment of the Federal Aviation Administration to ensure the federal government is maintaining the highest personnel and policy aviation safety standards.
To be clear, are you saying race or gender played a role in this tragedy?
It may have. I don't know. Incompetence might have played a role. We'll let you know that. But we want the most competent people. We don't care what race they are. We want the most competent people, especially in those positions. And you're talking about extremely complex things. And if they don't have a great brain, a great power of the brain, they're not going to be very good at what they do, and bad things will happen.
The memorandum directs the Secretary of Transportation and the FAA administrator to immediately review all hiring decisions and changes to safety protocols made during the prior 4 years, and to take all necessary corrective actions to achieve uncompromised aviation safety. The president has made it very clear that this is a common sense solution to solving some of the problems that we have seen at the Federal Aviation Administration, and also when it comes to many of the federal agencies across our government. People should not be hired based on their disabilities, based on their skin color, their gender, their race. None of that matters. What matters to this president and this administration is how well you can do your job, and the American people agree with that sentiment. So it's about competence, skill, and merit. And so the president is focused on ensuring that the most competent individuals, the best and the brightest in this country, are in positions in this federal government, especially when it comes to public safety. Can't overemphasize the importance of those jobs. Sure.
Karoline. So as follow-up on her question before, President Trump is holding China accountable on fentanyl by ramping up tariffs. So how is President Trump planning to hold China accountable on COVID origins?
I haven't spoken to the president about the COVID origins specifically in regards to any actions he may or may not take when it comes to China. But as I have previewed quite a few times today, he will be implementing a 10% tariff on China tomorrow. Sure. Hi.
Has the president made up his mind about a timeline for tariffs on the EU?
No, he has not.
And will it be a one-size-fit-all, or will it be differentiated among governments? I
won't get ahead of the president on tariffs when it comes to the European Union. What I can tell you, again, is that the president will be implementing 25% on Canada, 25% on Mexico, 10% on China tomorrow for the reasons that I have repeatedly laid out in this briefing. Newsmax, go ahead. Yes.
Thank you so much.
No, the gentleman behind you.
James Rose.
Yes, James. Thank you.
Thank you, Karoline. Two quick questions on foreign policy, and then one very long and tedious and ponderous Rosen question thereafter. First, on Iran, we've heard very little about the president's forthcoming Iran policy besides his determination to prevent that nation from achieving a nuclear weapons capability. Is it the president's objective, short of the use of U.S. military force, to use the broad array of his powers to try to hasten the end of the Iranian regime?
I think the president has actually made his position on Iran very clear, and he made that clear when there were the negotiations about the ceasefire, which we know obviously is now in place, and the deadline on that ceasefire has continued. He said that Hamas and Iranian-backed terrorists would have hell to pay if that ceasefire didn't move forward, and then quickly thereafter it did. I also do have news on the hostage front, which I'm very surprised nobody asked about this because it is big news story.
Karoline, in your first brief briefing, the media went after this administration for deporting illegal immigrants they claimed were not criminals.
That's
The
right.
question is, do you think they're out of touch with Americans demanding action on our border crisis?
The media out of touch? I think the media it certainly is out of touch, and I think that's proven by a number of things, John. Number one, there was a New York Times poll that was released prior to President Trump's inauguration by the New York Times, which of course is a legacy media outlet, that showed that 83% of Americans support deporting the individuals that you mentioned, illegal immigrant criminals, especially those who have committed heinous crimes in the interior of our country. And I received a very actually interesting statistic on this front from ICE this week. 97% of the deportations that this administration has made thus far are of individuals who had a removal order from the previous administration, but were never removed from the interior of our country. So this shows that the previous administration was actually defying our laws, and all this administration is doing is simply following the laws, the immigration laws of this great country. You know, the media has this way of just looking at everything in a microscope rather than looking at the whole of government economic approach that this president is taking. He will effectively implement tariffs. He's also, as I just answered from Stephen's question, committed to tax cuts. He's also clearly committed, as evidenced by his executive orders, to unleashing the might of our energy industry, which we know will eventually drive down inflation, and all the other economic measures that this president has made will have a Trump incoming economic boom, just like we saw in our first term.
And has the White House
Sure.
found any?
Fox Business, yes.
Friends of Reuters are reporting that the president has made a decision on the Canada and Mexico tariffs, but that they won't actually be implemented until March 1st. I was wondering if you could confirm that and talk through some of the president's thinking.
I saw that report and it is false. I was just with the president in the Oval Office, and I can confirm that tomorrow, the February 1st deadline that President Trump put into place at a statement several weeks ago, continues. The president will be implementing tomorrow a 25% tariffs on Mexico, 25% tariffs on Canada, and a 10% tariff on China for the illegal fentanyl that they have sourced and allowed to distribute into our country, which has killed tens of millions of Americans. These are promises made and promises kept by the president.
The president yesterday said that last night he was planning to discuss whether an exemption would be made on oil imports. Do you have any information on what decision he made there, or will there be exemptions at all offered under this?
I don't have an update or readout for you on the exemptions, but those tariffs will be for public consumption in about 24 hours tomorrow, so you can read them then.